Thank you for heeding the call. I sense the evil magic of the Lords of Chaos at work. The streets of Gotham City are plagued by masked apparitions, spirits torn from the depths of hell. I will bestow upon you a temporary consecration. You will have the power to put these spirits to rest.
Thank you so much. You saved my life.
Oh my God! Do something!
What the hell are you? What are you doing to me?
Don't hurt my family!
Hey, changed my mind. I do believe in ghosts.
Way to bust those ghosts. Listen, I was just in contact with Phantom Stranger. He's got a lead on the source of this chaos. He said something about a magical imposter and childish revenge. Boy, that guy can be cryptic. Anyway, I've added the location to the on-duty tab of your communicator. He'll meet you at the Midnight Masquerade nightclub.
What was once a masquerade of darkness is now shrouded in genuine evil. To break the spell, I will conjure crystals that can sever our foe's connection to the Dark Veil. You'll need to place them in a pentacle as they become ready.
So, Tickle, are you enjoying the party? That's right. We'll teach the rude people of Gotham not to make fun of us on Halloween. I am not an emo pilgrim. I'm a witch boy.
Clarion, you've lost control of your little prank. It's not too late to put things right.
Tapped into Black Adam's powers of Shazam!
Crystallos Ordo! The first crystals are ready to be placed.
Behold the power of Shazam! Get them, Tickle! What? Those spells weren't up to my standards anyway.
Crystallos Ordo! Place the crystals.
I am my own master! This is your fault. My tricks wouldn't be nearly as fun without the powers of Tala, the Mistress of Hell.
Maybe we can lend you a hand. The Sentinels of Magic have conjured up a charm that will banish those masked apparitions. I'm teleporting the magical magnet in now. When it's full, you'll need to release the apparitions into the spectral retention chamber. We'll be sending it in shortly.
Crystallos Ordo! The last crystal is prepared.
You've got to help! Get away!
Clarion, your poor choices forced the Lords of Order to act. Countless innocents were harmed because of your careless temper tantrum. You crave respect, but your actions do not secure it. I've channeled your dark magic into an augment for good, and have bestowed a portion of it upon these heroes. Now, be gone from here.
Who are you to lecture me, phantom stranger? I thought you weren't supposed to interfere with us mortals. I won't forgive you for ruining my Halloween.
Temper tantrums are a pretty big deal when they're thrown by a witch boy. Growing up in Limbo Town can't be easy, but he's turned into one troubled kid. Maybe now he'll think about what he's done and learn something from it. I doubt it, though. Have a happy Halloween. Oracle out.
Simon uses...
Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. And we did have some information that was released over the past couple days. And now it's finally made it to the test server. And those two changes revolve around two major changes to the game. One is finally the nature power set changes. Nature has changed dramatically in terms of some of the powers. I will be covering that in a later video, probably coming out tomorrow. But the one I wanted to cover first is the one that not too many people knew about. If you understood damage splitting and how powers are supposed to work, then you did understand it. I know there's plenty of YouTubers that kind of like glazed over the subject and like just either, you know, out of sight, out of mind, or just ignored it, or just accepted the fact that that's how it was supposed to be. But what I'm referring to is heat vision, specifically tied to the rank 200 soul amplifier. So I'll put it up on the screen here. So Batuba said, fixed an issue where AoE explosion, which is basically the final AoE proc at the rank from the explosion proc from heat vision, was not splitting damage properly. This caused the amplified heat vision explosion to deal much more AoE damage than intended. And then he said this is just left out of the patch notes. It'll be updated soon. So it is an intended change. He just didn't put it in the original patch notes. So what does that mean? So at rank 200, as you see, what's here? Your I-beam overheat and explode, damaging enemies near your target. So what the rank 161, that actually worked perfectly fine. Same thing with the 120, 160, except obviously the 160 added the burning. So that was perfectly fine and working as intended. But when the 200 rank came out, that's when something completely different happened, which I'll jump to live server in a moment to show you what that actually mean and what needed to be changed. So it should have kind of sent some red flags to everyone, because you know you've got people in the forums making like entire guides revolving around using heat vision on like melee and all range loadouts. You've got electric DPS using heat vision instead of like the proper electric rotation. So when you've got a single target heat vision dealing more damage than like electric DPS and AoE, then that should be like, you know, red flags going off, something's not working correctly here. When you see like YouTubers use like heat vision on every single melee loadout, that should be another red flag. I mean, I'm not being hypocritical because I've used it too. I think I've only used it once in melee, and that was fire. I didn't need to. That's just the damage it was doing. But at the same time, when I used it, I'm saying heat vision is bugged, but it's one of the things that where we don't have a choice because of how much extra damage it's doing. So you're losing a massive amount of damage by not using heat vision. So I think ranged, I did use heat vision often. I can't remember, not on everything, but I mean I did use it in some powers, especially in like the I know in munitions I mentioned it, and in ranged, or did I can't remember. Obviously I'll be making changes to those videos, but if you go back and see it, then you'll see why. So there's perfectly fine substitutions you can use, like freezing breath, sonic shot if you're mid range. There's other powers out there. Obviously there's still going to be a damage drop because of how OP this soul amplifier not damage splitting was. So let's kind of jump to the live server so I can explain what actually is changing, because the kind of explaining the concept around the damage splitting and what that actually looks like is kind of hard to talk about. It's one of those things where I have to be shown. but it's something that isn't readily explained in the game, so I can understand why some DPS would be, reprehensive about this change, or that the Earth is falling down, or hey, I wasted money on this artifact. Well, that's still not the case. Heat Vision is a single target artifact. Heat Vision is a single target power. It's just that this artifact made it a bonus that it did AoE damage. So that's this bonus should make it the most powerful AoE artifact might DPS have. It's still the highest base might artifact in the entire game. So it's not like you wasted money on this. You still get power channeling, which is huge for munitions DPS. Still burns all your targets near you. You still get the initial explosion proc. It's just that doesn't have not hugely non-splitting damage. It's not like you're going to change your single target rotation. It might do a little bit less damage when there's a bunch of ads on a boss, obviously. But let's cut the BS and let's show you what actually changed. So let's hop to live server first, and then we'll jump to my results. Okay, so I wanted to have a live versus test server comparison just so you can see what actually changed, because obviously these changes haven't hit live server yet. So presently I am on the EU server.
Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG in which you write your...
With Pony, I'm mental on both servers. My might is going to be fairly close. I'm 73,413 on this server. I think I'm 73,380 on test, so that's the 60-70 might difference is not going to be consequential enough. I am still running the transformation card because you're still going to have that regardless of the rotation for crits, and I'm running a scrap just so I can lower my might. So I'll show you here. I'll bring up the combat log. It's going to be a little bit annoying because the dots are going to make it move pretty fast, but the reason why Heat Vision needed to be changed, and what a lot of people didn't realize was happening with it, and this is only in rank 200. Rank 160 it worked. It was just that once you got to 200, it was broken in terms of splitting damage. So we'll see if we can get a good one here. So you can kind of saw it there if I go back here. So 19k, 20k, 20k, 20k. So it hit those the 4 or 5 targets there for the initial explosion. So we'll wait for the dots ticked again, just so I can show you. Let's see if we can get some others. Right there, you saw it again. If I go quickly up to the combat log and scroll up, that was 21k, 19k, 20k, 20k, 19k. So I'm hitting multiple targets out of these 8 for full value of the explosion. So it's not like it's following absolutely no splitting rules. Boom, right there you saw again. I hit 5 of the 8 targets for 20k. So it's the same thing if you're in a dog pile of ads and there's 15, 20 ads or whatever in a hallway. You can just do Heat Vision. You're proccing those full value of the explosion on multiple targets. That's not how damage splitting works. you don't get to do that. So like for example, if I put on like mass tear or something like that, just like a burst power. So if I go to like 3 targets, I'm hitting 2 targets there, 25k, 25k, and 10k. Now we go for 8 targets. And the same thing. Each one's dropped, like they've all dropped to 9 in terms of the splitting. So 999, 3, 9999. So that's how damage splitting actually works. Same thing if I go Heat Vision here. Boom. Each one was the 20k as you saw. 22k, 20k, 18k. So I hit each target for max value. And then if I go back over here. And then boom, I just hit 5 targets there for including the max on there before. So 20k, look at that, 20, 20, 21, 20, 20, 19. So that's what you call not following damage splitting rules, and that's why you saw Heat Vision used on like every single melee rotation, every single range rotation. I'm not being hypocritical here. I've used it as well, and I've mentioned it in my guides. But at least when I did it, I mentioned that you have to use Heat Vision because it's so much of a damage loss doing anything else because of the bug. Where there's plenty of other YouTubers out there that showed loadouts and showed guides where they don't mention that at all because either A, they didn't know, or B, they just didn't want to tell you guys about it. So let's jump on test server and we'll show you what Heat Vision actually does now properly after the changes. Okay, so you saw the live server comparison. This is on test server. I'm close as I can get. So 73,340 on live server. I'm 73,413. So 70k might is not going to be making that much of a difference at all. But in terms of I use Heat Vision now, as you saw what it looked like on live server. So now you don't see that, like, 20k, 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 19k, on those 5 targets. You don't see that now. You see it properly splitting. So I'm still getting the single target damage. I'm getting 20k proc on the explosion. Everything else is like 2-3k. So I'll do it again just so you can see it. So what you're not seeing is those giant explosions on everything else. So it doesn't change your single target damage. The only adjustment is going to be on single target damage. See, I'm still getting the 19k proc on there. So the only adjustment at single target damage is going to be if it's a boss like a whole bunch of adds. Obviously, because of the damage is going to be splitting properly now, you're not going to have a bunch of all those extra adds getting hit for 20k. But I mean, other than that, it doesn't change it for single target. That still stays the exact same. It's just that the melee and the range has changed. So if I go over to 3 targets, same thing. So one target got hit for 20k and the other got hit for what, like 2 or 3? Yeah, 20k. Yeah, 29, 28, and 23k. So before you saw it in the live server example, each one was like 23, 23, and 19k. I'll do it again here. Now 6 and 6 because the other one didn't crit. So you got much more realistic damage splitting, where before there was no damage splitting. So you can't have, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the artifact. It's not like you can try to justify it, like, oh yeah, it wasn't supposed to split damage. That's included in the artifact. No, that's a ridiculously overpowered artifact if it was going to be ignoring damage splitting rules. All it is that your I-beam overheat and explode, damaging enemies near your target. It doesn't say about it's not going to split damage just at rank 200, because at rank 160 is the same thing. So if I throw in the 160 and go back to those 3 targets. Same thing. One got hit for 19, one got hit for 9, and the other one got hit for like 2. And the same thing here. If I do 8 targets, same thing. One got hit for 20, the other one got hit for like 8 or 9. So, same thing. So the 160s always work properly. The only thing that's been broken is that rank 200 artifact. And only when you got it to rank 200. That's why this was an issue all along, because the rank 200s only came out, has it been a year? I don't think it's been a year, but I mean, we've obviously had 160 for a lot longer. So that's all it is. So I know it's a little bit harder to see in terms of numbers like this. So let's jump into the log analyzer to show you some proper results. Okay, so now we're looking at some proper actual results. So we can actually show you the proper examples here. So this is the DCUO log analyzer. It's a tool for all PC players. Unfortunately, the PS players don't have access to their individual logs, so they can't use it. But this is a very one of the best testing tools we have in the game's history. So this is going to be a live server under Obsidian Chill, and my other log is going to be under Familia, which is going to be the test server, obviously, and this is going to be the difference. So amplified heat vision, all I did was on the 8 sparring targets. Like I said before, this will be 73, 413. This will be 73, 340 might. Everything else is the same. I'm running the same artifacts. Well, not the same. I'm running the transformation card and the soul amplifier 200. The third artifact changed, not that it impacted the results. It was just to basically adjust for might. So the other important thing is that my crit percentage for all these parsing was 45.7 on live server and 45.6. So it's pretty much a complete wash in terms of crits. So there can be no real crit bias over the averages. So we jump to the parser summary. I'm doing 36 10-second parsers for 360 seconds of total DPS time. This is live server. And on test server, same thing. If I jump to it, I'm doing 36 10-second parsers for 360 seconds of total DPS time. So I'm trying to eliminate as many variables as I can. Yes, I'm sure there's, some missed parsers, or I didn't do exactly the heat vision at the same time. So yeah, these total results could be like, within 100K of each other, but I mean, at the same time, 100K is still not going to make that much of a difference. So what you want to look at is the total damage. So this is live server. So the total damage I did just using heat vision. So as you saw the combat breakdown, I'm only using heat vision. I did 12,263,924 damage in 360 seconds. And on the test server now, after the changes, I've done 5,591,186. So I'm doing less than half the damage that you're normally doing with heat vision. And why is that? So if we go to the move inspect on both. So basically, I filtered it by minimum 15,000. Why that is just because I'm taking a look at just the crits. So this is going to be on live server right now. So 311 crits. So basically, what this means is that I had 311 procs of the explosion, not only on the single target beams, but also on the AOE ads as well. So that's 311 times that it didn't split damage properly. Well, not really 311, but I mean. Yeah, just ignore that I said that because I can't prove how many times it didn't split damage properly. I could, but I'd have to eliminate each time Soul Amplifier was used, and that's too much work. But I mean, at the same time, you can see 311 compare on test server, it's 132. So this 132 is only the individual singular beams and then the possible one crit proc of the explosion. So that's it. This is what you're going to be seeing on live server after these changes come through. So as you can see, the massive difference is how many of those extra critical procs you've got because of the damage splitting. So that's where all that massive damage is missing, and why we're breaking down, 5.5 mil to 12 mil. So that's where that damage went, is from the damage splitting. It's not like heat vision itself. The single beam didn't get nerfed. That's the exact same damage. The dots are doing the exact same damage. Maybe adjusted slightly, but the main difference is that all those extra procs. So all these extra, non-splitting procs of damage. So this is live server. If I go to test server now, and top hits, same thing. So you're still getting those, just not as often. So this is probably what shows it the best there. So 311 versus 132 times, which is how many times they're procced. So that's what you can be looking forward to on live server once these changes come through. So heat vision goes back to being a single target artifact. You're not going to be using it on a melee, and you're definitely not going to be using it on ranged. I mean, you still can. It still does damage until you have burning dots. So, I mean, if you're, say, like a nature rotation, I mean, you're probably still going to have to use heat vision regardless, because you're getting the chances to have the strategist card procs on the dots. And there's really not. Well, I guess nature will probably be using like freezing breath or sonic shout, stuff like that. That's probably where it's going to go back to. And freezing shout and sonic shout are a little bit more awkward because they're channels and you have to tab cancel them. But that's the same thing. So obviously, massive change to heat vision. The Soul Amplifier artifact at rank 200, but this is doing is bringing it back in line. So if you had, like I said before, if you had a 160 artifact, you're fine. I mean, everything was working as intended. If you would have ranked up to 200, it should have been the exact same as it was at 160, just hitting harder because you got better stats. But when you had 160 went to 200, all of a sudden you're getting like giant, huge increase in damage, like more than double the damage increase, 12 to 5.5. That's the type of damage increase you're seeing because of the non-splitting issue. So there it is, guys. I'll bring the nature changes most likely tomorrow, and then we'll get back to my proper upload schedule. I know I was kind of it's been a little bit light on the past week, but I've still got Celestial coming. I've still got my Ice guide coming, and I got my mental DPS guide coming. Tons of videos on this month. So stay tuned. We'll see you in the next video. Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for today. This is coming from the test server. I wanted to cover what's going to be more than likely, or 99.9% likely, the last changes to cover to heat vision and Soul Amplifier. Because if you haven't been following the forums, you're missing out on AVTV's acting like a child and throwing a temper tantrum because he's not getting his way, because his way is moronic. But let's cover the actual changes here. So I'll put them up on the screen here beside. So Soul Amplifier, change Soul Amplifier to where burn is applied to the primary target instantly. Should work like baseline heat vision. Fixed an issue where Soul Amplifier was accidentally splitting damage over time, which is the dot. And fixed an issue where Soul Amplifier explosion was splitting damage on primary target. So let's cover what that actually means. So one of the drawbacks of the initial heat vision, so for example, if I take off Soul Amplifier right here, the regular heat vision, you could hit it, jump cancel it, and then you had that burning tick applied right away. So for whatever reason, if you had to cancel it, or if you didn't want to do the entire duration, at least you still had a little bit of damage because it was applying that burning tick for basically free damage. But when you had Soul Amplifier, that stopped. So you had to do the entire duration for that to actually apply that burning tick. I'm not sure if it says there. So you got the 10%. So basically, as soon as a rank 80, you didn't get that burning tick anymore. You had to wait to the end of heat vision to get that burning. But now, so you can see, Soul Amplifier is on. You get that burning tick right away. So Soul Amplifier is on. This is the blue heat vision. So you get that burning tick right away. So it's not like, you know, I'm not trying to justify that's like some giant change and it's like massive damage increase, but I mean still it's a damage increase because you're getting your burning tick right away. The other thing that changes, before, if you saw my previous video, you'll see the dots are ticking a lot less because the dots themselves are splitting damage. So you see my dots hitting for like 200 or 300. If you go to my previous video, now they're hitting like properly in the thousands again. That's because instead of the damage splitting on multiple targets, it was splitting on everything. So basically just, you know, like split damage, switch to all. So now the dots are properly splitting again. So you have that damage. So it's what changed with heat vision. It's going to do more damage than you saw in my previous video. Is it going to do anywhere near the damage that it was before? No, because that's the point. So like I said before, I do have a question, honestly. I read like most of the comments. I've been reading the comments on the forums, but I do have a question to propose to be answered, and you guys can answer this in the comment section. All the people that wanted refunds because Soul Amplifier is being changed, what was your plans for like boss damage? I mean, so you're upset that they changed Soul Amplifier after a year because it was bugged. And I could list off like 50 things that have been bugged for years, and all of a sudden were changed. Except those were changed for good. So it's like, oh yeah, great, thanks for changing that. It's been broken for so long, but now they fixed something that was actually good to revert it back to where it was supposed to be. And now it's like, oh, you know, screw the devs. they're always nerfing stuff. So tad bit hypocritical there. But yeah, I mean, what was your plan? I mean, so you'd sell Soul Amplifier to another artifact. What were you gonna do on boss damage? So, I mean, heat vision is still going to be on every single target rotation for might, except like 3 power sets. So unless the entire game decided to switch to like celestial light and like gadgets, because they're the only power sets that don't need heat vision. So I'm not quite following what your plan was there. And besides, if you're running like the amulet, if you're running this for damage, heat vision is one of the best abilities you'll have for the amulet, because one heat vision you get like 3, sometimes 4 stacks out of it. There's a lower power cost in the channel. So not quite following what your plan was, unless you never were going to DPS a boss ever again. And the Soul Amplifier is still the highest might artifact in the entire game. Amulets got 5%, but it's base 1275. Philosopher's Stone has the same base might, 1785. But so Philosopher's Stone is only 4% might instead of Solar being 5. So you're missing out on the highest might stats you possibly can get. You're missing out on primary boss damage for 99% of might power sets. So it's still, this artifact is not going anywhere. It never was going anywhere. I'm not sure maybe if that was my fault, trying to like sensationalize the change, even though I mentioned that, you know, heat vision was not changing for single target. You know, you're still getting constant 20k ticks and the dot, so it's like that's not changing for single target damage. But that's so, I don't know. This is a change that needed to happen for the health of the game. There's no one in this entire game that can justify having heat vision on every single ranged AoE rotation. I mean, that moron AV, he's got it on electric. Like, he's like trying to justify that, oh, you don't need heat vision, like you can do regular rotations just as well. But if you go to his Might Master guide in the forums, you go to electric, it's like the Wrath of God rotation is electric with heat vision. So, and if you go back to my electric guide, I don't even use heat vision on range because it's not necessary. It's cheesing the shit out of it. And the same thing when I did like my munitions one, sorry. I said, yeah, you could do a little bit more damage with this rotation with heat vision, but you don't need it as munitions. All of a sudden, it's just going to slow you down. because munitions is meant to be mobile and not stand in the same position while you do heat vision for like 4 or 5 seconds. So it's one of those things where the irony is pretty thick and then the hypocrisy is pretty thick. But I mean, that's a change. Whether you dislike it or like it, that's the thing. I mean, you're still using this artifact. This is still one of the better artifacts to rank to 200. I mean, do you need the Kaga 200? No. You need the Tetra 200? No. Do you need like Amulet 200? I mean, it's a 1% debuff. I mean, technically it helps, but is it required at 200? No. I mean, do you need like Scrap at 200? I mean, you could use the extended supercharge bond. It gets 5% instead of 7, so you get 2% extra supercharge recovery. Manacles, I don't even have this at 160. Orb, I use that at 120. So it's like all these artifacts. I mean, this is just a small section because I can't fit them in my inventory. But I mean, there's very few artifacts that you require 200 to even be beneficial. You can get away with lower ranks. Soul Amplifier, once again, you could keep it at 160 if you want. But same thing, 200, you get the base mice stats. That's why I got it. If you go back to my previous guides, like in February, March, I only have the 160 solar. I got it just for the extra stats. So it's still just as effective as an artifact as it was before. Now we can actually get some balance around some range AoE power sets. So that's kind of like my final take on heat vision. You know, you can put in the comment section how you feel about it, if you're quitting the game because they're changing artifacts, or you still demand money to switch this artifact to something else, and then all of a sudden you're going to suck on boss damage and say, Obsidian, what do I do on single target now that I don't have heat vision? Well, that's your fault. So there it is, guys. We'll see you in the next video.
Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG in which you
Okay, so to take a look at specifically the nature healing changes, not really much changed at all. I'll put it up on the half the side of the screen here, what actually changed. But in terms of it, it's really just insectoid form. The poisons, or essentially for healer regards, the pheromones, are no longer shared. That really only is an issue just if there is like a nature healer in the group. It just means that a nature healer can't put out like Blossom, Metabolism, and Savage Growth, and all of a sudden you use Flourish, and then basically you refresh their pheromones. You know, it doesn't work like that. Now, whatever pheromones you put out, like if you use Blossom, Metabolism, and Savage Growth, and use Flourish, you're refreshing your own pheromones. So you're not doing anything else. You're spreading and refreshing your own pheromones rather than another nature healer. Same thing, just like a nature healer can't use Harvest anymore and refresh the poison for nature DPS. It doesn't work like that. It's nothing that should have worked. The only reason why nature was running Harvest was to basically just reset the poison so that the nature DPS could exploit with Roar. Well, I mean, not exploit. Bug, cheese, whatever you want to call it. I mean, technically it's not an exploit, but I mean, it's just like the cheesiest possible thing you can do with nature. Yeah, if you want to just abuse Roar. So yes, the only reason why a nature heart would use Harvest would be so that the other natures in the group could abuse Harvest. That's a better way to put it. So not like it really impacted your healing loadout whatsoever at all. Not like your loadout or rotation is going to change at all. You have the option whether or not to use insectoid form. This was the other thing that saw the biggest change. Why? Because, bug form used to be, it was a 12-second cooldown on bug form. Gemini lasted for 6 seconds. So it's basically, you just kept and even with Scrap the Soul Cloak, you would literally never run out of supercharge. So you'd pop in and out of bug form, give either Gemini, Caster's Watch to the entire group, and that's what was broken. That's what was completely broken. Because there's no, you're not supposed to be giving that much supercharge out. What the point is the DPS, and then all of a sudden, all the power sets that have good DPS supercharges like Electric, Rage, Earth. I mean, what's the point of trying to DPS against an Earth DPS when they can use Entomb off cooldown for the entire raid? So every 30 seconds they can use Entomb. So I mean, it's an unrealistic way to DPS, and it just makes it, completely skews the difficulty for content. So now, Insectoid form is a 30-second supercharge, and it's up from a 2,500 power cost to 5,000. So it just makes it in line with other healer supercharges. What changed with it? So we can kind of go into it here. So what I'll do is I'll pop Gemini back on. We'll get in combat. And we'll pop bug form. So in Insectoid form, we got 15% critical healing chance for 15 seconds. That has been increased up from 13, so another 2 seconds. 10% healing bonus, 15 seconds, and 30% critical healing magnitude for 15. So you got a small increase on the buffs, which most people don't stay in bug form to heal. The only healers that I've seen stay in bug form to heal were ones that wanted to use flight in innocent. Like say there's no grounding in a raid. Like Zoo Elite was a huge culprit of this on the tornadoes on second boss. So you stayed in bug form, so basically you could exploit flight. Well, it's not really exploiting flight. You're exploiting that there's no proper grounding mechanic. But most of the time, it was just you'd go into bug form, you'd hit like cross paw or jump to the boom or something like that, and then go back into normal. And that's what nature healers did before. So now all it is going to bug form. You can still do that. You can still have access to a second loadout. But now, what's the point really? There's no extra benefits to bug form when you might as well run like regeneration, which at least gets healing to the group. Regeneration. Same thing, 30-second 5,000 power cost, 30-second 5,000 power cost, or if you wanted to, a Pheromone Bloom, this is going to be 2,500. It's still a 30-second power cost, but if you wanted a little bit cheaper of a supercharge generation rather than 5,000, you could use Pheromone Bloom. It's a burst heal, achieves the same effect. But that's essentially what changed with nature healing. All it is impacting Insectoid form. Because of the potential to skew content. And the other thing, now that it is a proper supercharge, we have the supercharged Insectoid Form 3 head mod. So grant 5% supercharge back. That's typically what you would with any supercharge of 30 seconds and 5,000 power costs. You're going to have that back. So just to recap again, cooldowns increased from up to 30 from 12. The power cost is doubled in terms of supercharge cost. The buffs last another 2 seconds, and this new tactical mod. So that's the quick and dirty summary to what's changed for nature healing. It's not really, we're not trying to balance nature healing. I know a lot of people are asking for nature to have like an 8-man shield, which I'm sure that's a completely viable suggestion. But the purpose of this was just to basically just address what was bugged and what was overperforming as nature. So that's why it was really the only thing that got changed with nature healing was the Insectoid form, because it wasn't looking at balancing the power set, it was just looking at balancing what the bugs were. Okay, so taking a look at the changes to Nature Gorilla, we'll put them up on the screen here so you can read along. Not really too much changed with Gorilla. A lot of it was just damage tuning. So in terms of healers no longer get 10% damage when going for DPS roll, that doesn't really apply to Gorilla. That really applied only to Wolf. That's just with I didn't see anyone going into healer stance and going to Gorilla to proc the Eye of the Gemini. That was just Wolf, because obviously the cooldown was a lot less than 30 seconds, so you wouldn't be doing that in Gorilla. Maybe I missed it, or some other people did in raids, but I rarely, if ever, saw that. So they just made it to apply to Gorilla as well. So you've got the next 3 changes are just damage tuning, so you don't get the additional 10% roll buff, which was the same in Wolf. It was just Wolf and Gorilla were getting extra damage bonus basically in the form changes. And then also the temporary buff damage went down from basically from 20 seconds to 15 and 35 to 30. So it's just basically just taking moments to adjust Gorilla's damage. And then the other issue, which you can't really show in practice here, is countering enemies. So I'm sure plenty of you have seen videos, or plenty of you have seen hits yourself when you counter a boss and you're getting like 150k damage from it. The Gorilla counters were huge, and it's been like that for a long time. So now you're not going to get that excessive damage anymore. I'll show you the Gorilla taps but you're not getting that huge counter damage anymore, which is, it was rare. Like, it's not going to happen every single time because you got the tanks countering, healers, controllers, stuff like that. So, but when it did happen, it was a giant hit, like 150, 200k hits that I'm sure you've all seen before. So, well, what we'll do is we'll jump on the regular Gorilla rotation. So really, what's changed with Gorilla isn't so much the nature change, it's the change to heat vision. Heat vision was the primary source of total damage for nature. 40% of nature's damage came from heat vision because of the non-splitting damage, because everything else was just dots. So really what has hurt nature, or at least in Gorilla form, is heat vision. So I'm not going to mess around with trying some different rotation. I'm just going to show you the exact same one so you can get a feel what it was going to look like on live server. I'm sitting at about 72k might. On live server, got like 76. But we still have Transstrat Solar. You may even find yourself still using heat vision, because the point of heat vision was to have more dots to proc the strategist card, because the strategist card is where now the primary source of damage for nature comes from, at least for ranged, because you've got all the dots ticking, all the criticals on the dots, you've got heat vision dots, you've got heat vision the channel itself. So all these opportunities to proc the strategist card, that's where nature always shined. So let's just get into it here. We'll pop Psychic on. Actually be quite beneficial if I actually had a combat log up. 30 seconds, that's fine. Let's go 10, because we'll keep it 30. So we got 1.1 mil there. Or not 1.1, but you get what I mean there. 115k. So before, even in my nature guide, I think the same rotation would have been like 1.6, 1.7. There's a 1.2. So the damage difference, like you can see, Gorilla damage is still doing okay damage for ranged. The principal drop off is that heat vision change. That's what primarily affected Gorilla. So I really don't know if using like freezing breath is going to change anything really, because then you're losing all your ticks from heat vision, which just basically gave the opportunity to proc extra damage. So I don't need to keep going there. So you get the point there. So really, the rotation going from like 1.7, 1.8, 2 mil maybe, depending on your stats for ranged. Now it's going to be like 1.5, 1.2, or like around 1.2. 1.1 was the first parse. You're going to have at least 10 seconds that with no strategist proc. So that's obviously that's why that lower. And 1.2, 1.7, or that's 1.17. But you get the gist there. So really, the only change or nerf to nature Gorilla was just heat vision. Wasn't impacted by anything else. So as you can see, I wasn't doing weapon taps there. So if we did weapon taps here, that's what we're looking at now. So I'm not sure what my prec is here, because I know 30k prec. That's still pretty high. Because I'm pretty sure I get at least some. Yeah, this is 14k. Oh no, that was strategic card proc. Let's go into my logs. Yeah, so it's about the same. I was getting around 10k crits, base of 304. So the tap damage in Gorilla really didn't change that much, considering I'm spec'd, what, 75 skill points in a prec. So that's about the same. Okay, Psychic. but the counter damage is the primary change there. So you're not going to get that, you know, a huge outlier damage in with your criticals. You're just going to have that regular tap damage. So that's about all the changes to Gorilla. Is it a giant nerf? No. I mean, it just keeps it competitive with everything else. There's plenty of other power sets for Might that do around 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 damage. Now that Gorilla is just not that huge outlier with heat vision. So it's one of the justifications. How could you say that, you know, you see those tiny little changes for Gorilla, so it's only the buff change, a 5-second buff, which wouldn't matter after a 30-second purchase anyway, because you're not refreshing Gorilla that often. And then all we technically lost was the 10%, because everything else was a temporary buff that's only going to last for the first parse, which you didn't really care about for Gorilla. Gorilla is more of like a long-term range rotation. So really, we only lost 10%, but obviously it's a lot more than 10%, or a lot more than 10% because we're used to getting like close to 2 mil parsers on 8 targets, 30 seconds. Now we're getting like 1.2. That's all heat vision. So it's one of those things where how can you justify heat vision being the way it was before when it was accounting for that much damage for Nature Gorilla? So really, nothing really changed with Gorilla. It's about the same. You'll just notice the reduced damage because of heat vision. So there may be another rotation out there, like I said, using Freezing Breath or Sonic Shout's not full range, but this is just showing you what you're used to Gorilla and what you're going to see.
Hey, would you pay $50,000 to attend online classes at Harvard? Or
Okay, so looking at the wolf changes, wolf is where nature changed the most, which made sense because that's what needed to change. So I'll put it up on the screen here, but the cooldown was increased to 30 seconds, up from 12. So that prevents the refreshing buffs constantly. That prevents the Gemini spam. So Supercharged Koch increased to 5,000, up from 2,500. So once again, you're just not using Wolf as often as possible. Temporary buff is increased to 15 seconds, up from 13. So it means that when you're in Wolf, you do the buff damage slightly longer. That's all those criticals. Instead of lasting 13 seconds, they last 15, which is like the critical attack chance, critical ability. Healers will no longer get 10% damage increase, DPS roll while in wolf form. That just means that you're going to be less damage when you're proccing. Like say you're healer going to wolf just to proc Gemini, you don't get any DPS buff that you don't get the 10% roll buff there anymore. And then fixed additional issue where DPS is getting additional percent. That's just the passive 10% buff that you got within the form change that it didn't have anything to do with the temporary one. So what I'll do is same thing. I'll show you a basic rotation. So it's one of the primary things that this changes is that because the cooldown is not 12 seconds and 2,500 power cost, you can't refresh Wolf in between sets of ads all the time. If you have another like healer or tank in the group using Gemini, you can do that some of the time, but every single time you're not going to be able to refresh Wolf with it being 30 seconds and 5,000 power cost between each set of ads. So before you could do that, you pop Wolf, set up all your dots, you got massive crits for those set of ads, then the ads are dead, you move to the next one, you transform back to human, put the dots up back into Wolf. You know, that was the typical rotation for Wolf. You can't do that now. With it being 30 seconds and 5,000 power cost, that's not happening anymore. So obviously in Wolf, you're going to require having those dots anyway, or at least one dot, because if you're going to stay in Wolf, then you need at least to have a couple dots set up. You're going to hinder yourself way too much having 3, because obviously you still need return to normal, but you have that ability there. So we'll just do the regular Wolf rotation. I think I'm still in 30-second parsers, which is fine. And then I think I'll just rebuff my might just to make sure it doesn't run out, because I can't remember last time I did. And my might's at 72k, which is low for a test server, just because I don't have anything else. I'm mostly Spectre Prec. So we're at the 72, where I'd be like 77 or 78k might on live. But just so you can have a reference of testing. And I really don't need to keep continuing it because obviously you guys are well familiar with that rotation. I'm not using the Dervish rotation either. So 95, 1 mil. So you're still getting good damage out of Wolf. It's just that the fact that with the supercharge change, it's just not OP damage. You're not refreshing your Wolf every single time. You have to wait for the cooldown to roll out. You're going to have to make choices whether or not you want to stay in Gorilla form, because obviously Gorilla, you're going to have to keep that for single target regardless, or you have the extra AoE damage from like Impaling Thorns. So it's just that before now, Wolf was a clear choice. Even running something like Gemini between, you have the Gemini procs from Pollux's Gaze. You don't necessarily have that anymore because same thing, 30-second cooldown and 5,000 power cost. So that's what you have to pay attention to before. So once again, not some huge, massive nerf. Like Wolf can still be practical. Wolf is still viable in damage. 1 million damage is pretty much a par for the course of what you're going to find for like Earth melee, stuff like that as well. So it's still practical. It's just that now you have to watch yourself because, especially in like regular, you're not going to have the opportunity to de-transform and set up your crits again, where obviously Wolf crits is going to be where not a huge chunk of your damage comes from, but it's still going to be a chunk of that damage, especially if you're going for burst. So you're always going to have to run like Call and Briar no matter what in Wolf. So if you're not resetting Wolf or having a supercharged spammer in the group, you're not going to be able to have those 3 dots anymore. Now it's only going to be 2. So that's going to be less damage. So it's just overall, Wolf is just much more trickier of a build now because of not only the increase in the supercharge cost, but also the increase in the cooldown. So that's the primary changes to Wolf. Other than that, not too much changed.
Each piece of enhanced battle armor is available in multiple combat roles and customizable colors.
Glad to see you again. Checking in with you is the highlight of my day.
Always happy to help a friend find exactly what they need.